Hey everybody, what you doing for Christmas? Me? I'm sanding drywall. And one of the little secrets to sanding drywall and making it look good where you can take the humps and the lumps and the bumps out of the wall is, I don't know about you, but I'm not a big fan of sanding. I'd rather not wear one of these all day. I'd rather sit down and have a smoke. So as you can see, my butt joints I took out really wide. That's almost 3 feet. Very thin in the middle, very super to a feather on the outside. And then my seam joints, I take out about 1.5 blades with a 12-inch blade. Corners, I just happen to have a butt joint there, so I took the corner all out. The nicer you put on the mud, the less sanding you have to do, which I hate. It makes my arms go numb. And worse than that, I cannot stand looking down the wall and seeing big humps and bumps. That wall right there is super duper crooked. But with the wide mud joints, it doesn't look too bad. Right there, believe it or not, I had to put in a big old patch where I had to bust a hole in the drywall to work on some wiring. My ceiling, it's done by the other owners or the builders, is 3/8. All I had was 1/2 inch. I patched that with 1/2 inch, and by taking that mud seam out and doing some creative taping, you can't even hardly see the hump in the ceiling. So, secret to a good paint job is a good sanding job. Secret to a good sanding job is a patient mud job. I'll put 3, maybe 4 thin, razor thin coats on to fill up the gaps. It's better that than too thick, because too thick you're going to end up with your corners will not be square, they will actually be pinched, which means your trim's going to look like shit unless you're really good at coping the corners. So I did what I could do on the ceiling. It's only 3/8. I'm sure there's going to be some spots that show, but I'll paint it with probably a flat or an eggshell paint to hopefully hide it. I did all the joints and the nail pops I could find. I put some screws in it where it was loose. We'll see how it comes out, but all in all, it's going to come out pretty decent. I got to keep moving shit around the sand. So that's my helpful hint. Multi-coats, super thin. Put it on, shave it off. Just leave on the factory joints, just leave a slight bow. You can see right here, you can actually see the paper. That's how thin it is. But yet I got a little hump here into where I can see the paper here, and I will very lightly sand this. And do a lot of touchy-feely with your hands when you find a booger. After you get done with the first initial sanding, feel the walls with your hand, find your little booger spots, put a smear of mud on it and cut it right off, and it will fill that little gap. I have one here that I already did, but the more you mark out, the less final sanding you have to do. Mark it with a pencil. You can come back on, and like I showed a second ago, right here was one. There's just a little spot where the edge of my knife hit. You just put it on and shave it off. Wait for it to dry, feel it. If it feels okay, touch it up with the sandpaper. So that's my helpful hints. Renovation ongoing. I'll show you when I get a coat. Look at that job on the ceiling fan. Nice, huh? Early American cabin. Alright, so you want to learn mudding. Technically it's called mud and tape. What you do is, here's your corner. You get the plaster or the mud. You smear it on, make it thin, both corners, no gobs. Then you take your tape, you fold it, just paper tape. Hold it 90 degrees, push it into the corner, then you take your trowel and you get all the excess mud from underneath it, which just leaves a thin layer, and that will smooth it out. Then you take more mud and put it over the top to cover it. So that gets us to where we are right now. This is a butt joint, and you put the tape, same mud, you thin it out, put the tape on it, get all the excess and the bubbles out, then you put a coat of mud over it. That's what I'm about to do in this corner right now. Let me back you out. It's not hard to do, but you have to do it right or you end up with big gobs that you have to sand off. Okay. This is a mud tray. You put your well mixed mud in there. It's you got to thin it out when you buy it. It's like they put less water in it, so it's lighter weight. You got to mix it all up and make it thinner. Consistency, I don't know, like a gravy that's too thick, little thicker than that. This is a 6-inch knife. You treat them very nicely, no nicks on the edge. That's very important for smooth. This is for corners and mudding and taping. Then they make wider trowels. This one's like 9 or 10 inches wide. This is for the butt joints. You want to carry them out as far as you can to make a good taper. These come up to 2 feet wide, but I've been using this particular trowel for so many years that I can get the same effect and not use the super wide trowel. This thing is worn down from rubbing on that paper, sharper than most of your steak knives, so you got to be careful with it. But the main thing is not to nick up the edge. So basically what you do, and this is the second coat, you just go over it real quick, make sure there's no gobs of drywall mud, no boogers sticking out. This will cut them right off usually. Give it a rub and a check. I got some sealing to do also. Yeah, it's noisy. The smoother you get it, the less trouble you have. So, put some mud on your trowel. I don't even know if you can see this. Put some mud on your trowel, and because we're doing a right-hand corner, you take some of the left-hand mud off. That way it concentrates it in the corner. And then you just run it over the tape, slight angle, and you taper, you bend your trowel and taper the outside edge to 0, and then you run this down very lightly but firmly to smooth out all the gaps and the bubbles. The smoother you put it on, the less sanding you have to do. Some people sand with a sponge, a damp sponge, because this mud, even when dry, is water soluble. I haven't got that technique down yet. I'm better off just dry sanding it. And on the corners I do one corner at a time. So I'll go around the whole room and do one corner. Now I'm going to do the top. Same thing, up against the ceiling. Taper the bottom edge. Put a little curve on it where one corner meets the other. And then you taper it smooth. Now these are nail holes. Those will get about 3 coats. I already got 2 on them. Because every time you put the mud on a hole, when it dries it shrinks into the hole, so you got to keep filling that hole until it comes out flush with the drywall. And again, with these you taper the edges. And that's that. Now on a butt joint right here, let me touch up this corner. You don't want big gobs and beads of the mud because it's harder to sand, and then you'll end up over sanding and have to do it all over again. Now I have a few spots in the ceiling. They got to be dented in slightly. You just put a gob on there and take it off. This drywall's got some flex to it. That's not good. But I'm not redoing the whole ceiling. It ain't perfect. The new owners will just have to kind of live with it. I'll make it as nice as I can. There's a big hole right here. That's going to take several coats. So I'll put the preliminary coats on now. Now let's do this butt joint right here. Normally I do the corner from top all the way to bottom. But I want to show you how to do a butt joint real quick. Alright, get rid of my little knife, get the big knife. And if you look very closely, I have a slight bend on it, which will actually create a slight hump on the wall. Alright, on a flat butt joint, you go directly over the joint, firm but light. Put a coat of mud there. Then I fill it up again and stretch it out another half a trowel, plus or minus. See, that's the bottom of my bucket, so I got some stuff that's kind of stiff and goopy, kind of like Play-Doh. So I got to get rid of that, or it's going to keep leaving streaks in my mud. And eventually I will bring this joint all the way to the corner. Now you push on the wall real hard on one side and actually bend your trowel so it makes a tapered edge. And then you feather out the center. Refeather the edges. This is really tough talking through this because usually I do it so fast without talking. Now, that's not acceptable, but it's good enough for now. Let me show you. So now I took that little narrow joint and made it like 18 inches to 2 foot wide from there all the way to there, so that there's technically a hump in the wall, but because you feathered it out it doesn't look like a hump. Even if you look at it sideways, you really can't see the hump. So that's how you mud, and you got to do the whole fucking room like that. Okay, here you go. Here's a butt joint. Now this is an old butt joint that used to have tape and mud on it, but it wasn't good, so I had to tear it apart. It's in the ceiling. See, right here is one sheet of drywall, second sheet of drywall, and right here's where they butt together, where they bump together. I'll show you how I do it. I'm getting the little chunks off right now. And this is only 3/8, which isn't near thick enough for a ceiling, because it has a tendency to sag. Alright, so what you do is, I got the tape off and I got the loose pieces of paint and plaster chipped off it. So basically, you fill your trowel and you go sideways to the joint and press the mud into that crack. This is usually where you end up with a gob on your chin. I hate when that happens. Alright, so I got the joint full. Yeah, this is going to suck because it's actually drooping. And I can push up on it. There's no way to secure it. Okay, so I got the joint full, but I got all the excess off it. Now you get the drywall tape, which is just paper tape, real thin but strong. You take out approximately how much you need. That's my favorite part in the whole wide world. Straighten it out. You put it centered over the crack. Hold it one finger and touch it so it sticks to the mud, to the wet mud. Now I'm trying to get it in a groove. Usually there's not such a groove there. But this, like I said, it's old drywall. And then you just run your trowel along it and get all the air bubbles from underneath it. That's the tricky part. So I'm actually scraping the mud underneath the paper, moving it along like a river, I guess. And it gets all the air bubbles out. Then your mud will stick to the plaster. Or drywall, I mean your tape will stick to the plaster. And once you got it all smooth, come back with your trowel, because it's actually below the surface of the drywall right now. Come back with your mud and cover it up. And that fills the rest of the void. So it ends up smooth. And then I will come back when this dries with the big wide trowel and make it even wider so it just helps it disappear. Cut the edges off. I should say scrape the edges off. And then you smooth out the center. And your object is to make that butt joint in the drywall disappear. And when the drywall mud dries, it will actually shrink into that crack and make it even flatter. That way I can put multi-coats on it. And that's how you do a joint. Alright, everybody take care. I hope you have a great Christmas, and I hope you have an even better New Year. Start the new year with a good attitude. Play nice.